Hello, I am James Craig. If you're just tuning in, I am a self-published author. I mostly do cyberpunk, bit of East Guy, bit of random stuff, honestly. But there is one market that seems in need of content. Well, to be honest, I'm not personally drawn to creating it, but I am interested in it, which is the market for kids right now. Because basically everything I hear is the content produced for kids is crap. And to be honest, you might not like this comparison or bringing this up, but I just watched a huge documentary on Coco Melon and how it's causing developmental issues in kids. Yeah, like that's the popular entertainment for kids. So there's obviously an incentive for skilled indies to step in and make a product, such as Sergeant Carter here, who has for sale now, link in the description, A Night Before Christmas.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a labor of love for me, this particular book, and it's difficult writing a children's book and then looking at the finished product and saying that's finished because I'm a published author. I've written for Telos. I've written for the Destroyer Books series, and you see 100,000 word novel, and you're like, yes, that's something. But a children's book, often you can finish that in a spreadsheet. It's like, hey, this picture should say this. This picture should say this. It's a lot more directorial to it. This one, however, was more traditionally done. It was written about 20 years ago. I got to read it live at a Christmas party one time for a place I worked at, and it's gone relatively unseen. It did get a brief publication at one point with a friend who was trying to get into industry, publishing books through Lulu. I was trying to help him out, but it didn't stay up very long. And I was like, okay, well, I want it taken out of print because I want it back. He's like, oh yeah, no problem, done. Which is why you can see some reviews on this book that just came out 2 days ago, and it never looked like this. So there's no real eBay hunt for the first edition on this one.
Right. So I imagine. So I looked at your bookstore. And you have a ton of stuff available on your bookstore. You've done a lot. I assume that in the last few decades, since the initial release and today, you probably identified a lot of things to do better with the illustration. I assume you tweaked the writing a bit.
I did tweak the writing a bit, and I got the illustrations to be far more kid friendly. The first one was beautifully illustrated, but it was really aimed towards adults. It was a fine arts approach to it, and more realistically drawn things. I'm like, yeah, I need something that's more P.D. Eastman, a little bit more H.A. Rey. The stuff that I read when I was a kid, and the stuff that I read to my kid when he was learning to read. That's what I wanted this book to look like.
All right. So, as I alluded to in the Twitter post advertising this, selling books is hard, but selling books to someone who isn't even on the internet has to be a lot harder. Because my understanding here is you're basically selling to the parents. Because, like, how would you sell this to the kid direct, right? Because
absolutely,
it's not like you're a multi-billion-dollar publishing company that can just throw this onto grocery store shelves.
Exactly. And I've made that exact same point on panels at conventions before when we talk about children's literature. I said, you're never selling to the children. You're selling to the parents of the children who think that their kids will like this. So, and that was a discussion about children's books that went out of their way to anger parents. I'm like, why? That's the actual customer. They're the ones with the wallet.
Yeah. So I think that's probably going to work because I have to admit that I've gotten old, and the internet has gotten old with me. There was a time in the early 2000s where selling a kid's book on the internet would have been ridiculous, and yet we're all still on the internet now. And those same people now have small children. They're following. Hopefully, they're hitting subscribe on channels like this.
Right down.
So obviously you've done the most important thing though for a creator trying to grow, which is you've released a lot of content. Do you do a mailing list?
We do not do a mailing list. Don't say that. George will be all over me again. He'll be saying,
"Look, no, I'm with you. Mailing lists are obsolete." I was just curious because that's like such a common, like, oh, you got to get a mailing list. Mailing lists are so good for driving sales, and I hate getting spammed with emails.
Me too.
I actively go away from any company that spams me with emails, and I don't think that's unusual. So I don't understand why the mailing list advice just persists.
Yeah, and even if it's stuff I'm interested in, like if it's a a Kickstarter or an Indiegogo that I backed, and I start getting notices from it, I see the notice come in. I'm like, is it done? No, delete. Is it done? No, delete. That's the one I want to see. I want to see that it's done and on its way. I'm like, okay, I'm waiting for it now.
Okay, that's a difficult one because I've backed a few Kickstarters for graphic novels. I'm currently getting spammed by Ripaverse, which is driving me away from wanting to buy their products because it's just marketing. It's not even like new material. There was another one that gave almost no updates and was late by 6 months. And then he just sent an email going like, by the way, I had to move countries. It's shipping now. Sorry about the delay. I was like, okay. And then I had the product in a couple days. So that was fine. And then the third example I have is someone that hasn't been sending updates, took my money, and I think they're now 10 months late, and I still haven't gotten the product.
Yeah, there's it's a balancing act. Do you send an update or do you not send an update?
Yeah.
I used to tell backers, or not backers, but campaigners, says you send an update once a week, even if that update is to say there's no update since the last update. And the point for that wasn't so that you just keep your readers involved, but so that the campaigner would get sick of sending an update that says there's no update and would do something so that there'd be something to report. You get tired of saying, I didn't do anything this week. I got to do something this week so I can tell people I did something. Make this thing move.
Right on.
Sneaky to them.
Yeah, so that the better than a mailing list for someone who just releases books, and like I just release novels every once in a while as they get completed on my own schedule. It's not therefore I have no deadlines to miss, but I still need people to know when I'm doing things like releasing book 3 of my series is going to be for sale in December is the plan. And I'm relying on like Twitter, which Twitter hates unpaid advertisements.
And Facebook's worse.
Yeah, I won't even go on Facebook because like my impression of Facebook is it's a lot of daily life spam, and you just get lost. And the people who have found success getting their name out through Facebook is through Facebook groups. And what I heard is basically self-promotion is not actually allowed. You just have to hope that one of your readers goes there and markets for you.
Exactly. So there are groups where your marketing is perfect and you're not allowed to do it. I learned that the hard way with Reddit.
Yeah, Reddit is the same situation. Reddit is an enormous amount of people, but if you go there saying, "Hey guys, I released this great cyberpunk book," banned.
Yeah, it's weird. You're not allowed to promote yourself in most places on the internet like that. Now that they make subgroups. There are some groups where they're like, hey, we want writers to come in and do this, but then when you do that, you got a smaller crowd because you're marketing to other writers.
Yeah,
who don't want to spend their money, they want yours.
Yeah, that's extremely dysfunctional when it's just writers selling to other writers. I think those tend to survive because by online culture, essentially, writers are typically pretty nice to other writers because they like don't throw stones in a glass house. They don't want to be criticized themselves. Sure. And that can lead to situations of, hey, I had 10 other writers tell me my book is good. Then they release it and they get like 1-star reviews from actual readers. And I've had a few friends just like burn out immediately because they felt that everyone had lied to them. So those writer groups really are not great, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's been years since I participated in writing groups. I used to be a regular on Francis Ford Coppola's Zoetrope magazine, the online thing. And what Coppola was doing was he had an online zine where he's like, hey, here's the workshop over here. Submit your stories. And, if you review 5 stories that have been submitted, then you can submit 1 and then they'll review your story. So it was sort of a pyramid scheme of reviewing. But really what he was doing was he was using all the submitters as an unpaid slush editor. So that, if something rose up from the readers and the submitters said, hey, all the submitters thought that this submitter was pretty good, it might have a chance of getting into the actual magazine itself. None ever did that I'm aware of. But
Yeah, the slush pile is a nightmarish thing. I don't typically submit to things because what happened with me is like I was submitting to magazines and contests when I was a less developed writer. So I kind of understood that I didn't stand a great chance getting published. But then I was learning more about the editing, like the process of a story getting accepted and just how fickle and random it is. And then I got a few explained rejections that were just complete nonsense. And it's like, okay, you read 2 paragraphs, didn't you? And then chucked this, which
and listen, as an
too,
editor, I'll tell you that's exactly what we do. I have a panel this weekend at Archon in St. Louis coming up here about editors being your friends. And my whole position I'm moderating is like, no, we're not. My entire job is to find a reason not to publish your book because I got 20 other stories here that got to get to, and I don't have the time to read all of them from beginning to end. I had a slush editor lost his mind because we did The Devil You Know Best. It was a big book, tons of submissions, and he was the first line slush editor. He's like, I'm not doing this again. I swear to God, I will never do this again. I was like, you're reading every story, aren't you? He's like, well, yeah. I'm like, if you're not hooked in the first 3 paragraphs, pitch it. Get rid of it. Move on. He's like, I can do that. Like, yes, that's actually your job. Look for reasons not to publish this thing. And then he got a lot happier.
that is abject suffering for the author, though.
Yes, I know it is, but it teaches the author the very first lesson of marketing the book is get the hook, set the hook, and set it early.
So I've talked to a lot of readers though, and no one like the readers I talk to really don't like stories that waste 0 time trying to be quirky and upfront and get a hook in early, even though that's what gets through an editor.
Yeah.
Not to mention that the submission process bypasses the cover and the blurb. There's no cover art attached to a submission, which you pull up this book and you go, oh, there's a chase with robots in a mega city. I can wait a moment through a character introduction is what I believe a normal reader process is.
Right? Yeah, and by setting a hook, I don't necessarily mean that you have to have like falling off a cliff action, record scratch. I guess you're wondering how I got to this point and then backing it all up. It's amazing how far basic grammar and just pure writing
the
skills
other half
will
of
get
this.
you can open up with the cover
because
the
majority
you
of
can
writers
open up with the front yard of a house and just describing the house, and if it's well written, it's enough of a hook to keep the person reading the next paragraph. But if it's like you've used the word yellow twice when describing the paint, or you left off a period and just kept on it, or the paragraph was one big sentence, no, learn to write first.
All right, so we are here mostly about the kids' book. Talking about novels is kind of my wheelhouse, but a kid's book, like you said at the beginning, can basically fit on a sheet of paper with some notes.
Yeah.
How are you hooking people? What is your strategy there when books that small? And it's for, by the way, what's the target age for this book?
The target age for this book is actually all ages. I've had adults who've enjoyed this story.
Okay.
I enjoyed this. This is one of the stories that I've written that is one of my favorites, actually. I mean, they're all my babies, but there are sometimes I'm looking at a story like, yeah, I wrote that. This one here is like, yeah, I wrote that.
Nice. Okay.
It's different, I guess, with the kids' books because they are illustrated. You do have that hook. With a novel, a lot of times the publishers want to get their own artists. They got in-house artists, so they'll determine what your book looks like. You're self-publishing, so you get to determine what your book looks like. So you've got that extra advantage of the image that you're going to convey to the reader right off the cover, because we do judge a book by its cover.
Oh, absolutely. The cover is the consumer's first experience with the book, and that can set a lot of expectations.
Yeah, and unlike the comic industry, which we're both big fans of, the cover of a children's book is actually representative of what the interior of the book looks like. You always have the same artist.
Yeah, that's a little odd of how many comic books just shell out a bunch of money for that cover image, and they get this beautiful high render cover to sell the book. Then you open it up and it's like a bunch of flats, and you're like, "Excuse me."
Yeah. What? This is not what I bought. This was not what was on the wrapper. But the children's book, you can hook with the title alone, or you can.
Yes,
hook
I did
with the
appreciate
very
this one here. I don't know. Oh yeah, it's in the thumbnail. It's a Night Before Christmas is spelled KN.
Yes, and I'm not the first person to do that.
Yeah.
In various formats, but this was a story that the stories that I love the most are the ones that keep me awake at night, early morning, and say, "Okay, are you going to write us down now?" You spend all night staring at the ceiling, watching words float through the air. This was one of those, and it's just about this young little boy who lives in a stable behind Camelot, behind the castle, and he wants to be a knight. He knows the rules of chivalry, which I have boiled down to 3 bullet points here for kids. He's like, I could do any one of these things. I could do all of them. So he decides that in early October he's going to set out with a horse from the stables. He goes to the armory and he gets himself a lance and a shield and a banner, and he goes questing.
Is that why you chose this as the release date? Early
yes,
October?
Actually. Well, it's because it's a Christmas book, and you can't just release a Christmas book on December 24th and hope to sell it. You've got to have lead time for a holiday book. Any other book comes out whenever it wants. But if it's a Christmas book and you want Christmas sales, you have to be in the market in October. Because that's when the purchases start happening.
I guess that makes sense. That checks out with my understanding, because I assume that's the amount of time it takes for the initial buyers to get their reviews up on it, so that you can get actually secure sales in December.
Yeah, because you don't want to sell something on December 24th and then get it on January 2nd from Amazon. It's I don't even want to read it now. It's not Christmas anymore. Put it away for next year. But that's the gist of it. It's barely a Christmas story at first, because he's garnered these things to himself, and he's going out on a quest. I had one reviewer said, and he was promptly shot for stealing stuff from the armory. I'm like, it's a kid's book. Let's just go with it. But he knows the rules, and if you want to share the screen, I can actually get to that point, because the rules are very important to the story itself. And this is Krista Erickson's artwork, by the way, throughout here. She was just perfect for this. When I saw her portfolio, I was like, okay, here's the story. She's like, yeah, I want to do this story. But this is Clarence, and this is Clarence showing the horse Penfold, his favorite horse in the stable. Says, look, I've got I've written them down. This is what it is. And the rules of chivalry are off to the right. It says, a noble born by God's grace may, at the king's pleasure, be made a knight, provided he demonstrates in deed and spirit one of the 3 qualities of chivalry. One is, a knight shall defend king and kingdom against all foes, no matter how great, no matter the cost. 2, a knight shall selflessly fight in battle until peace has been achieved. And 3, a knight shall, when opportunity presents, secure treasure in the name of the kingdom, assuring the future of the same. So that's what it is. He battles enemies, he attacks attackers, and he finds treasure. So he can do any one of these things, he thinks, because
Is he noble born?
Oh, you're just gonna jump right to the end of the story, aren't you?
I'm just looking at the clause there that you have
Yes.
to. It says in the commandments you have to be noble to be a knight.
Okay.
When he said he
look,
lives in the stables.
I got to the end of this story and I closed it out. It says, yes, that's a good ending. And I went to bed, and I woke up at 3 a.m. with my eyes popping open. I'm like, oh no, it's not. And I had to jump back into it. I got out of bed to finish the story because, yes, you glommed right onto onto the clause that eliminates everything here, and that's why this is really a Christmas story. Um, but
All right,
as
we
far
don't
as
need to spoil it, but you're saying there's a, let's
there's a
call it
twist
a
ending.
wholesome twist ending.
There's a wholesome twist ending here, yes. But basically, as Clarence goes out to fulfill all the rules of chivalry, he ends up losing pieces of his what he's carrying around. You know, the
His
accoutrement.
armaments, his
Yeah,
knightly
he
gear.
loses the shield in a first encounter. He loses the sword in a second encounter. In the third encounter, he just loses everything. The banner, the horse, he's walking home. He's got nothing. He's not even wearing armor, by the way, when he goes out, because he doesn't have a suit and armor.
Heavy clothes, close enough.
Yeah. Get down.
Viewer has the right word for us. His regalia.
His regalia. Thank you. Yes. So he goes home completely despondent. It's Christmas Eve as he returns through the gates of Camelot. It's snowing. He's cold, and he's got nothing. And he goes to the stable and climbs up into his bed and says, "Well, that was a big joke on me." And he barely gets to sleep when the king's messenger says, "Clarence, get down here. King wants to see you right away." And it turns out that all these failures that have happened, well, they've been noticed by other knights returning home. They're like, "Hey, I found this shield. You won't believe what happened to this." And they're like, "Look at this sword. It's all bent up. It's beat up." And again, I don't want to spoil the things that happened, but overall, it turns out that Clarence met and exceeded the rules of chivalry in spirit, if not in word. And of course, it'd be a happy ending if he becomes a knight, wouldn't it?
I'm sorry, you faded off a bit.
It would be a happy ending if he does become a knight, wouldn't it?
Oh yes. Okay. So I've got some questions for you about kind of, let's call them meta questions, because this is an all ages kids book, and I've seen a lot of discourse lately about what's appropriate for kids. So I'm curious, if he's going off to do battle, what's he battling against?
That's the thing. He has to find something, doesn't he? Yes, you can't defend against
this
the
could be
enemy
anything
unless you
from
find them.
like bandits to goblins to misunderstandings.
Exactly. And this goes kind of back to when I was a kid wanting to be a superhero in my small town of 900 people and fight crime. There just wasn't any. It's like I would check, around town in the morning, say, "What happened last night?" Nothing. No, it's like, so, imagine if you were a kid I wasn't, but imagine a kid running around in a cape and a cowl and just going home every morning having done nothing because nothing's happening. So he's out looking for enemies, looking for things and not finding them. In the meantime, encountering these other situations of need that he addresses because he's a good human being.
So I'm reading the chat here. Akasos says, "I think a lot of children's media is not serious enough. Like as a kid, I used to read folk stories, and they had stuff like the hero getting chopped up into 100 pieces and being resurrected by a wizard."
Oh, kind of like one of our first quote unquote children's stories that we published, the Brothers Grimm. 540 pages.
That's such a weird thing. Is what is perceived as okay for kids has been so sanitized in the last few decades.
Yeah. I was like, I was, reading through the Brothers Grimm, and George was doing the illustrations. He's like, "Okay, what points do we want to illustrate?" And I'm like, "Man, you ain't gonna believe what happens in this story." You get to the Cinderella story, which was actually called Ashputtel.
The OG Cinderella story. Here's a paring knife. We're gonna chop your foot down to size, young lady.
Yes. And when she's like, "Stepmother, may I go to the ball?" And stepmother says, "No, you're a slut." And I'm like, "What?" And I had to go back to the old. This was the original text. Like, really? She called her a slut, and it turned out that was a word for a lazy person, because they were always putting Cinderella to work or Ashputtel to work. Like, you're lazy, you're a slut. Like, I can see how the word kind of evolved and why it would have done so, but like, can we still market this as a children's book?
You might need to what would that be? Temporal localization?
I wasn't going to change a thing in it, but I wanted it to be the original. But I do, make sure people realize it is the original and that language has evolved. Um,
All right. Yeah, so it's just funny. Like I'm the generation that grew up watching Dragon Ball Z, and the that was not a censored show, really. Like even though it was a cartoon for kids, like that was like nonstop, relatively horrific violence against random people, and that was like totally normal, and no one turned out weird because of Dragon Ball Z.
yeah, people were dying in the Harry Potter books. That wasn't that long ago. Uh,
Oh, let's not answer that question.
well,
Oh,
kids were reading it. Kids were reading it, and it was violent. So
yep, yeah. Kids, yes, that was just a few years ago. All right.
well, okay. 20. It was 20 years ago that the first book came out.
No, I think the first book was in the 90s. Let me check.
A little bit longer than 20 then. Yeah, because I found the first 3 books around 2000-ish.
Yeah, 1997. Jesus Christ. All right, so yeah, that's that actually brings up another thing. A lot of parents I know have defaulted to just rebuying the stuff that they read when they were a kid rather than even looking. That
Well,
has to be an uphill battle for you.
it is, but a lot of the reason why parents are doing that is, they're looking at the books that are coming out, and okay, so the whole argument that fans have about Cartoon Network. They're saying like, look at the original Thundercats, and now look at what Thundercats looks like now.
Mhm.
The same thing is happening in the children's books market. They're they're made more simply. They're drawn more simply. So when a parent's going out and trying to buy children's books and they're like looking at Dogman, wildly successful. Come on, you can't fault Dogman. But as a parent, you look at that and you're like, really? You should see some of the stuff that I read as a kid, and then they go back and they buy it again. My son is 16, and when he was a very young baby, I was on eBay because my children's books were out of print. I was like, no, you've got to read The Man with the Take Apart Head. You've got to read the Tales of Mr. Pengachusa. And I was so happy to get those books back, by the way.
I can believe it. Yeah, so when I was a kid, my father read the Chronicle. So what my father would do which influenced my taste going forward was he would read books aloud on car rides because we would. So I'm from Michigan, which means obviously every summer we went down to Florida where it was warm in the winter. And on those drives, he would read C.S. Lewis's The Chronicles of Narnia and J.R.R. Tolkien. And after that, he went through The Lord of the Rings.
Didn't he keep his eyes on the road?
Mother was driving.
Okay. Scared me for a minute.
No, it was a full minivan. And I actually remember seeing some of the artwork. And the intricacy is what enchanted me as a kid because it was like full effort fantasy art at the time. And yeah, okay, maybe I was a bit young for Lord of the Rings because I was like 6 through 9 or something was when we went through those books. I had no draw to like when I was that age. If I had seen today's Cal Arts, I would have been actively repulsed by it because I was in that phase of, oh, that's kiddie stuff. I don't want to be a kiddie anymore.
Oh, James, I was my son was 12, and we were watching the Teen Titans Go movie on Cartoon
The
Network.
Go movie.
The Go where no, I guess it was
OG Teen Titans were great.
It was the Teen Titans Go versus Teen Titans where they were all together in one.
Okay.
And whatever one it was, there was like a stay tuned for a special premiere of Thundercats Roar, and the thing comes up and he's like, hey Dad, can I stay up and watch this after, because it comes on right after. Can I stay up and watch this? I'm like, yes you can, but let me show you something first. And I brought up my phone and I brought up one of the original Thundercats episodes while the preview is still running here, and he's looking at the phone, he's looking at the screen, he looks at the phone, he looks at the screen, says, that's crap, I don't want to watch that.
Smart kid.
Yeah.
Um,
And nobody else did either.
do you think that this is just there's two possible explanations here. One is they've these companies that moneyballed this and said this is more productive, this keeps kids' attention better, we'll make more money doing this. The other is we can pay cheaper slop artists to churn this out faster and therefore net more money.
Yeah.
The trends in the larger traditional industry have to be money driven in that regard. Um, do you think it's cost cutting, or do you think it's just trying to like put kids into a visual stimulus trance where they don't know any better?
It could be a little bit of both. And they're making it cheaper, but the thinking is that this is an established fan base. They're going to watch it no matter what.
Well,
They don't think there's a possibility that you can push a fan base away.
You know, the funny thing is there's exactly one series for kids that comes to my mind that has not screwed up in that regard, and that's Pokemon, which intentionally made the choice of we don't want to retain people because we're a kids series. So we're going, that's why Ash never grew up, and like it took like 17 years for him to beat the Elite Four in the series, because like 2 seasons of Pokemon was enough that the target audience aged out, and then they were selling to the next audience. Yeah. And they just kind of maintained the same thing over and over and over again to incredible monetary success.
Yeah, Archie was in high school for 60 years. And it worked. You didn't have to change it for that's something that books, particularly comics, have lost. They've tried to age with their readership rather than allow for that readership to disappear. And the thing is that readership's still going to disappear, only slower, and you end up with not getting new readers and still losing off your dying old readers until you don't have.
Do you think that happened because of Harry Potter? Because honestly, the Harry Potter books coming out one a year every holiday season, and every year Harry Potter was 1 year older. That had to be a brilliant marketing move.
He was 1 year older, and if you as you read the books, you see that the writing actually gets more mature. Yes. So she was following that keeping up with her fan base as people were getting onto it. Now the thing is, it's a 7-year bridge, so it's not like there's 40 years. And a new generation can still jump on at Harry Potter 1, which is written for them, and then after a year they jump to Harry Potter 2, and as the reader is maturing, the books are maturing. It's not something where like the cartoon has matured, but the previous issues aren't available for the younger readers to get into and learn and read from.
Yes, the back issues, comic books are there. Is insane.
Yeah, the back issues of comics are there, but kids can't afford those back issues to get back into the 60s, 70s, and 80s storytelling style. Plus, it's 60s, 70s, and 80s, so there's the issue of it's aged out in a different way. Kids maybe don't want to read, stuff that looks like the 60s, looks like the 70s, the cars and the telephones that are on a table. And
oh God, I grew up during that time. No, landlines are weird and antiquated.
Hey, but thing is, my phone is plugged into the charger so much now that it's basically a landline again.
Yeah. I'm lucky I can afford to replace phones when that happens. That happens to laptops too. Like I actually stopped buying nice laptops because like the battery on a nice laptop only lasts like 2 years, and then it becomes a desktop.
Unplugged. It's always right here.
Yeah, no, I just bought a nice desktop, one strong enough to run virtual reality, and then I bought the cheapest crap laptop Google would sell me, and I basically treat them as disposable because that's how they're built, and it works actually because it's all I need there is YouTube and a word processor. All right, so here's a question for you, because you mentioned in Harry Potter that the complexity of the writing ages with the intended audience.
Yeah.
Could you explain what you did for dialing down the writing? Because I assume you didn't just write like the way you speak, I assume.
I kind of I I went back. I go to the classics, and I read a lot of what I want to sound like before I write, so that I've got voice and cadence going on here. And in this one here, it was it's very British, which it should be. It's the time of King
Sure.
Arthur.
Camelot.
So Clarence doesn't, Clarence is a little boy, but he doesn't, talk like, gosh, holy cow, what the, he speaks very, very erudite, even for a stable boy. He's just very naive about things. So, I tried not to dumb things down for the kids. I think that kids don't like that.
My understanding is it's actually developmentally bad for kids to talk down to them.
Yeah.
I'm a single guy. I don't have kids. It makes this conversation a little strained, but my understanding is adults, if they get in a conversation with a kid, without even consciously making the decision, will talk slightly above the child's competency, no matter their age, unless they think, for some reason, are convinced it's a good idea to talk like, I don't know, fourth grader to them.
It's weird because it's like, if you're talking to a fourth grader, you should talk sixth grade.
Yeah,
make
you
them reach.
Intellectually engage them.
Yeah.
I know that when I was a kid, the challenge of reading and understanding and wrapping my head around things was why I was reading. So if it was trivial for me to read, I put it down and I picked up something else.
Exactly. And, if there's something you don't understand there, there used to be dictionaries,
I still have dictionaries. I still have them on paper, and they can't change the definitions on me.
Exactly. It's like, what does that word mean? Go look it up. It's like, oh, now I understand what they're talking about. And Socrates said this. There's no greater joy than for somebody to learn something. So you give people the opportunity to do that learning. Contrary-wise, when you're talking to an adult and you need them to understand, you talk to them at fourth grade level.
And that's why our society is collapsing.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. I think we have all seen analyses of presidential debates and gone, you wouldn't pass high school English, my dude, and you're asking to run the country.
Yeah, well, the thing about running for president is you want the right person to have the job, and one of these years, by God, he'll actually run.
Yeah, will that happen in my lifetime? I'm not sure.
And I say that with full knowledge that you've looked at our bookstore and you've seen the top couple of children's books we've got.
All right. Let's see here. Talk to you about. By the way, what is the total word count for a kid's book? Is it like 10,000 words or something?
It's roughly that. It depends on what kind of kid's book it is. This one here, probably close to 8,000, 9,000 words. I haven't counted. I wrote this story until the story was done. This was more fairy tale. This was more, more enchanting and lilting in language. The one that Chris is working on right now is something called Under His Hat, and that was literally a spreadsheet. It was a 22 row spreadsheet with two columns that image, text, and it reads a lot more like a Curious George book. There weren't a lot of words in a Curious George book. You saw the image, and there was a couple of lines of text underneath there, probably 500 words at most.
So did you put in like intentional breaks of like, hey, I figure the kid reading this is going to put in probably this amount of reading a night because this is the story I'm trying to tell. I figured he'd math this out. This will take him 7 nights of reading. So let me make sure that I get my chapter breaks correct and cliffhanger it. Or is that, or do you not like cliffhangers?
This one's only 34 pages. So
okay. You think that's a one session read?
This is a one session read. Ideally, a parent would sit down and read this out loud, but certainly a kid, with reading skills could sit down and read the whole thing as well. The thing that George and I really worked on was to try to make sure we had something on every page graphically. And there's one area where we failed at this. But it was the only one page where we ended up without a graphic. I think as I scroll into this here, I'm scrolling as quickly as I can. Yeah, there we go. That 2-page spread right there. No graphics. I'm like, oh, we should have had Krista draw one more picture. But it was the only place. It was right there at the end of the book, and it's right there at the special twist too, where one of the knights says, "Hey, wait a minute."
I see the TikTok generation is just gonna scream in terror at seeing a full page of text, man. Don't you know about TikTok readers?
I know. I'm still trying to figure out how I can, print images that move. So
Well, AI will get there eventually.
we'll get that smart paper.
All right.
I had a spoiler picture up there, and I'll address it because people have been looking at this for a while, and it's like, what are we looking at here? I told you that
Oh,
Clarence.
he shingles somebody's roof with a shield.
Yes. He stayed the night there, and there's a big hole.
Not
in the
gonna lie,
roof,
that
and
took me a while. Without
Yeah,
reading
yeah,
it,
well-
just put that together.
Exactly. Yeah. He big gust of wind blows through while he's in there shivering. He holds up the shield, by instinct, and he's like, looks at the shield, looks at the hole, sees that they're about the same size, and he gets out there and he hammers it down. And then, the house isn't drafty, the fire can stay lit, the old woman can cook food, the man recovers from his cough, and he's like, well, I can't just pull it off there. It might rain again. And he goes off
This
without it.
is a problem though. That's not up to code. That shingle
No.
would never pass inspection, sir.
Not-
The
not-
nails are sticking out. That's a hazard. The OSHA is going to have a conniption.
I know. And it's he should have had to do the whole roof over, period.
Yeah, it's not even layered. You need the top shingle flowing over it. Never going to have a future. He better get this night job.
I know. It's not like, you can just go out and shingle somebody's roof anyway. You got to find, a whole wagon load of Celts who are coming through town, that don't speak, Gaelic, and they want to, shingle your roof for you real quick.
All right.
Isn't that how it worked?
Not sure about that.
We can't localize, temporalize everything, I guess.
Yeah.
But
all right. Let me see here.
But yeah, so he didn't really lose the shield. He used the shield to defend the family against the weather.
That's he has a good lawyer, I see.
Yes, he does. That would be the writer.
All right. Let me see here. So you ship through Ingram. By the way, is there this is just a writer shop question. Is it problematic to be putting in images through Ingram Spark? Do you have to do all the formatting yourself, or because I use their book builder tool like a lazy bastard I am?
I have the best business partner in the world, George Peter Gatsis. You might have seen him on Twitter with the Blue Fuzzy Muppet Joe King character, but he's actually very, very talented book designer, graphics designer, and we lay out the entire book, the text, the wrap, where the graphic placement is, the margins, because when we have a page where it's like the pictures going across the page, which we had a couple up here.
All right, so you build it with your partner, and then you just upload and tell them to print it.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly. We tell them what paper to use. We tell them whether it's hardcover or softcover. We tell them to use gloss. And then they just do it, or they come back and say, "Hey, something's wrong."
I have not had a need for interior illustrations yet, given the content of what I write. But there's stories on my back burner that are like, man, if I could justify putting in some illustrations at chapter breaks, that'd be so nice.
Well, you could always just like they did with the Harry Potter books, just put like a little thumbnail of an illustration above the chapter.
My artistic talent personally does not translate to 2D illustration. I am a painter of miniatures, which has elevated my standards of what I would want beyond my means to afford somebody that can do that.
Yeah, I can't even paint miniatures. I try to paint, And it's like, I've seen people paint, and then I've done paint. I'm like, there's a brush and there's paint involved. How come yours looks so much better than mine? Like right now, I'm painting a John Stewart into a Spectre. I'm like, it doesn't quite look like I want it to, but it's
Yeah, yeah. Painting in 3D is actually really bizarre because, particularly with photographing it, you need to understand how you're painting it for how it's going to be lit and how it's going to be looked at, and you need to decide if you're painting the mini for a good photo or if you're building it for use because or painting it for use because the way you want to paint, say, a Dungeons and Dragons figure is actually completely different from someone like trying to win a contest or just put it in a display case. It is quite a rabbit hole of color theory if you get into it.
and that's out of my bailiwick. That's why I have an artist.
Yeah. That's I've been enjoying the art you've been showing for the kids book.
Yeah, Krista did a great job. We did clean up some things here because it's like, I started looking at the pictures and realizing, oh, the story makes a whole big deal about how the crest of Camelot is red and gold. It mentions it in like a couple of places, and it wasn't red and gold in the artwork. So George said, no problem, and voila, everywhere it showed up later after that was red and gold. And it didn't look like it had just been colored over the top. It just blended right into the artwork that was there.
All right. Well, coming up to the end here, I should reiterate that the links to this are available in the description below, even though that suppresses videos. Thanks, YouTube. I actually neglected to put my own links in the description, but if you've been following this channel, you should know how to find my stuff. My God, I need sales and reviews too, people.
Yes.
So
hit the subscribe button.
Yes, hit like, hit subscribe. Thanks for tuning in. Do you have any closing, any other things you want to advertise before we wrap up here?
We have a huge bookstore out there at criticalblast.com. Just hit the bookstore tab. You'll see the children's books. We are finishing up reading right now for our second anthology, the second anthology in the Gods and Services series, which is Gods and Services New Location. We have the stories. We're working on the cover. I've got to write the framework story around that one because it's different than most anthology collections. And then we will be reading beginning in February for The Aliens Next Door. So, watch for that.
All right.
We're also publishing. We're also publishing previous creators. So we've been approaching people from the 80s and 90s and saying, hey, what's going on with your product? Approaching crowdfunders who are on like their 5th or 6th issue, saying, "What are you selling on #1 right now?" And we're bringing them new products. So things like X Thieves is coming back out of the 80s into an omnibus volume.
Cool. So you on Twitter, you are at Critical Blast, right? Am I crazy?
At Critical Blast everywhere.
Right. So if you want to tune in more to his streams, you should follow him on Twitter because I imagine you're going on a bunch of other streams soon.
I hope.
We talked a lot about how to sell books, and we came to the brief conclusion that finding YouTube channels with the right audience is the strong way to do it, which is how we came in contact. I imagine you're going in other streams, right?
That's the plan. I have not found any other streams yet, but again, the book is only 3 days old now. So make the window bigger to see the book in RJ's hand. What? Oh, no. He's talking about He's talking about this book, the X Thieves. I wish I had. The book is so new. The Night book is so new. I don't even have a copy yet in hardcover.
What? Oh my God, you have some confidence, sir. I never let things go to sale to market until I have an author copy.
Oh no, it's I've seen previous work, so I know what it's going to look like. In fact, I'm so confident that I've had the copies that I ordered shipped to the convention that I'll be at on Saturday. So the first time I see this book will be when I put it on the table at the convention.
Well, my personal story is the first time I tried to publish a book, my debut novel, I didn't realize what it implied to have a table of contents in front. And I got the author copy, opened it up, and was like, this is a murder mystery. And in the table of contents, it spoils the murder because the chapter title.
Oops.
Yeah.
Oh,
Oops.
yeah. That well, hey, I've labored over anthologies before. We did The Devil You Know Better, and I was on top of that. It was all over the place. This is good stuff. And I got the author copies in, all 20 of them, because we had 20 people, and I'm just reading my copy of it, like, "Ah, yeah, this is good stuff." And I'm thumbing through it, and in every book, here's The Devil You Know Best. We had the title of the title of the story that you're reading and the author's name at the top of each page, and ideally that changes when you change story. But for a span of 4 stories, it did not. And I hurled that thing across the basement floor and made the corrections and went off and ordered another 20 copies, but that was expensive.
Yeah. By the way, what con are you going to? There are so many conventions, and I know frightfully few of them.
I am going to Archon in St. Louis. It is, I put it in the private chat here so you can see it. It's archonstl.org this weekend. And then the weekend after that, I will be going to Eureka Springs, Arkansas for the Ozark Mountain Creative Writers Convention. So we'll be doing 2 cons in a row. Hopefully I'll have books left for the second one.
All right, so I'm gonna keep you a bit longer with a few more questions.
Sure.
Assuming you've been doing the cons, you've been going to cons and selling books for a while now, right?
Yes.
How long did it take you to make a profit at cons?
I've been at it for 15 years now. And my best estimate is going to take about 17, 18 years before I make a profit.
Okay, that makes sense. So last week I was on a stream with some other guys, a comic guy that claims that he would have turned a profit if he hadn't had to rent a truck to get there. And I was trying to add up all the expenses in order to actually have a booth, because it's like the racks, the material, the display, you need to get the graphic art stuff, yourself, your own time, the list just keeps going up, and a lot of it's like upfront costs that you can just okay. So I had to buy all these posters for the first con, and I'm just gonna use them again for the next
one. Sure.
So that pays off eventually, but there was like zero chance that somebody was going to turn a profit on their first con.
Yeah, and of course, the first con, I go there with a book. I've got a book. You have a book at a table. They're like, okay, I've seen your book. I go on.
Yes.
Next time I have 3 books. Now they got to take a little bit of time to look at things. And
I also feel like you need saleable merch to upsell people on.
Yeah, that does help.
Yeah, because when I go to cons, I don't go as a vendor. I go as a customer, and I look and see what other people are doing, which is why I have a pretty good guess how much it costs. And gotta be honest, a lot of people just get ignored at those conventions because, like you said, they have one book. People take a glance at it and go, I don't like that art style. Bye.
My first several years, I was a convention vulture. So like I would do the panels. I was a published author, so I was a guest of the con, and I would be doing panels here, doing panels there, and I'd carry my books all around with me. I did not have a table. And then here's what I found out about
building calf strength.
Yes, very much. And then on Sunday, when people leave early, they leave their paid for table. You set up. You set up at somebody's abandoned table because here's the thing I found when I was.
I hope you don't get kicked out.
Oh, the table's been paid for. They're not going to kick you out. The people aren't coming back. You're just sitting there. The only if they come towards you, they're coming towards you with a tax paper says, "Be sure to fill this out." So you report those sales. If you set up a table on Friday, most conventions, it's like the ceremony thing is at noon. People are walking in, getting registered. They're walking past your table. They're walking around on Friday to see what's going to be there. You're not going to sell anything on Friday. Friday is the day you catch people's eyes. You say hi to them. You talk to them. You have no expectation of their wallet coming out of their pocket. Saturday, maybe their wallet will come out of their pocket. Now they're like, okay, I remember yesterday this guy was sitting over here. Let's go see this thing. I really wanted to get that. Really wanted to get this thing. Okay, let's go see this panel here. But Sunday morning, when vendors are going home, These people have come to the convention with, they stopped at the ATM on the way in, and they've got all this cash that they're going to spend at the convention. And Sunday's the day they realize, I haven't spent all my cash yet. What am I going to buy?
Oh, I never even considered that.
So yeah, it's the last day of the convention is a really good time to get the people who are still walking around like, I can't go home with cash. That's an anathema.
Yeah, so I was upset with myself that I walked out with like one Gunpla and some Magic the Gathering cards when I went, and like one graphic novel. That was my haul from Baltimore Comic Con. I was like, I intended to spend a lot more than this. What happened?
Yes, so be there for the people who want to spend money.
Okay.
I
Yeah, I'll have to
will
adjust my estimates. That said, I imagine you're like brain dead if you've done 3 days straight of trying to sell.
Yes, you are.
Okay. Yeah. So you said you basically confirmed that you probably a new creator is basically just sitting there if they only have one book. You might start getting traction when you have 3, 4, 5 books, which is what I saw, which is what I see every time I go to a con is you got to have multiple offerings because people are so fickle with, oh, I just don't want science fiction. I don't care if it's the greatest thing ever. I'm just not interested in sci-fi.
Yeah. Well, you got the one book, they see it and they pass it by. But if you got the one book and 5 others, they see the one book, they look at the other 5, and while they're there, now they've seen that book a little longer, and they're like, no, maybe I really do want that book. There's a greater chance that they're going to buy the book than if it was the only book there. It's easy to pass up when it's by itself.
Yeah, so my big brain plan when I get around to doing cons, not only am I going to have a pile of novels available, but my marketing strategy is I'm going to pay a bunch of money to an artist and get these done well, but I'm going to make a collection of Magic the Gathering tokens based on my various characters. And I'll mark them as MTG compatible bookmarks. So that was one of the things I tried to buy at Baltimore Comic Con was I was looking for custom swanky tokens from the artist there, and I didn't find any. So open niche, it overlaps with interest. Somebody that had no previous interest in the book but plays Magic might say, damn, that's a really nice 1/1 goblin token right there. Hold on, let me see. I might want 3 for my commander deck. And it's like, well, if you buy a book, you get one thrown in for free.
Yeah, there you go. How do you print the back?
I don't know yet. This is a problem for future James. I probably cut them to the right size and thickness for a Magic the Gathering token. But rather than an MTG back, I just cover that with contact info of like, this references this character from this book, ISBN, da 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 da. Go here here's my Twitter, here's my website, here's this, here's that.
So like if they're playing the game, I've seen people have like black backed sleeves and all their cards are in these sleeves, so you can't tell, because sometimes you could tell, hey, that's a newer card. You picked up like, I'm going to date myself here. You picked up an Arabian Nights card recently, didn't you? Because
you are an OG Magic the Gathering player, huh?
My dude, I was playing in the Air Force in 1992 when a friend of mine came back from a convention and says, you got to see these cards. Check out how this works. And we were playing with cards that had black borders.
Okay.
I'm old.
So
I was there when Moses came down from the mountain.
Back, you predate the stack, I think. Yeah, which is impressive. All right. Well, we're at the 1 hour mark. Thank you very much for coming on. Thank you for answering all my random questions.
Thank you for having me on. I appreciate the opportunity to let people know this book exists.
All right. Hit like and subscribe. Buy books. Tell people you read books. Join my book club, maybe. My book club is currently reading the Canterbury Tales, which is actually the exact opposite of what you did to write your kid's book. I'm reading up to try and improve my prose. So, cheers.
Canterbury's good.
It's actually quite good, yeah.